What is up, you damn plebeians? Neo with the Balding Plebs, and I'm joined here today by the immortal one,
Mr. fucking YouTube, baby.
All right, Mr. YouTube, we're on the cusp of the release of The Last of Us Part 2.
Yep, as we're recording this video, we're about 36 hours away.
Sure.
A little bit less.
Let's talk about it. Our final thoughts going into the game's release.
Okay, so the reviews are starting to come out. Very highly reviewed game, right? I mean, I think you're looking at 96, 95, 96 on Metacritic.
96.
Tons of perfect scores from all the major publications, all this stuff, right? Okay, great. PlayStation exclusive, good pedigree from Naughty Dog. I mean, they've made a lot of pretty good games. Last of Us itself, holds up from a storytelling perspective 8 years later as still one of the best narrative-driven games.
Yep.
I mean, I think we can both say that maybe we've ever played. Phenomenal narrative-driven game. Some of the mechanics in the game don't necessarily hold up. I'm going to say that right off the bat. And, the thing with a lot of these reviews are, and I think this is a major point that's got to be made, a lot of these journalists, a lot of these game reviewers, for whatever reason, if the game is like some sort of movie, right, thematically, and it's Oscar-worthy, they give it a 10 out of 10. Very few of them give a damn if the game's any fun. Yeah. I'll tell you that right now. You read some of these reviews, I swear to God, the people don't care if the game's fun or not. They just care about graphics, voice acting, is the story interesting thematically, and that's all, great. Don't get me wrong. We got to have that.
Yep.
But for a game to get a 10 out of 10, it has to be fun. It has to be compelling. It has to be interesting. The moment-to-moment gameplay has to be there.
Well, I think sometimes, the player feedback and moment-to-moment gameplay is almost more important to us than story.
It is.
In fact,
you look at a lot of games that, have come out. They're basically 2D games. They're simple games, pick up and play games, and you're going to put hundreds of hours into those games, and they've got, D-grade graphics, right? They're pixel art, whatever they are. They're nothing special.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of fun with them. They're memorable.
Agreed.
As a gamer. And, we've played thousands of games in our career. Yeah. And yes, sometimes you do get lucky and you do get that AAA experience that is everything, right?
Yep.
Maybe Red Dead 2, Spider-Man, things like that. That was everything. Horizon, those type of games that are just, they are fun. They also have great stories. They've got excellent controls, voice work, everything.
Music.
But that's important, guys, when you look at this game, and for all the accolades this is getting, is this interesting, fun? As a player, are we engaged in the game? Right?
Yep.
That's what I'm looking for. When I do my review on this, we're going to sit down and play this tomorrow night. That's what we're going to be looking for. Because I don't necessarily think that there's anybody out there questioning whether or not Naughty Dog is capable of producing a AAA quality experience.
Yeah.
From a graphical standpoint, a voice acting standpoint, a environmental standpoint. I mean, you look at the pedigree, right? And how they've iterated, whether it be from the first Last of Us or Uncharted and what they've done in those games, you've got a really good pedigree here in this studio. So I don't think that's a question at all, whether or not this game is going to be graphically good or whether or not the voice acting is going to be good or even whether the story is going to be, emotional and tense and anything like that. At the end of the day, though, the actual gameplay, the moment-to-moment gameplay has to be interesting and fun.
And I always think that to myself because we talk about that all the time,
Does this game burn out after 15 hours?
You can have a phenomenal story, right? You can have great graphics, great music, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if I'm not having fun, if I'm not enjoying myself, that's why I play games.
Yeah.
I don't play games to fucking sit there and hate my life or be bored
or be preached to.
Yeah, or whatever. So whatever.
Yeah.
Am I having fun?
I mean, think of this example for a second. How many Best Picture winners would you say are movies that you've actually enjoyed over the last decade? A few, right? I mean, that's my answer. A few. I can't even tell you the last Best Picture Oscar winners out of the last 10 years. I think I can name one or two of them. I can name a bunch of them from way back in the 90s, 80s.
Yeah.
But I can hardly name any of them in the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And that's because a lot of these movies are very good movies. They're emotional. They're interesting, thought provoking. They make you seriously think about things from a human perspective. It's not that fun to watch. Yeah, I'd rather throw on Fast and the Furious. It's a lot more fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big, dumb, loud movie, but it's a lot of fun to watch.
So let's talk about our thoughts so far. Let's talk about the game. Going into the game's launch, we're going to go right top to bottom.
Well, that's just one thought, though. If we get an Oscar-worthy game here, right, a Game of the Year contender, that's your Oscars for video games, and it's the Game of the Year and an Oscar winner, so to speak.
But it's not fun.
But it's not fun to watch or play.
Then it's not Game of the Year.
Is it getting a 10 out of 10 from the great one?
Nope.
I'm sorry, it's not.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
It's not.
So let's talk about the game graphically. What are our thoughts? I'll go first. I think it has a really solid graphical base, improves upon what we saw in the Last of Us Remastered. And I like what they're doing with their environments graphically. I like the snow environments. I like some of the, destroyed, beaten down Seattle environments. I really like what we're seeing with that. And graphically, the character models, some of the movements from what we've seen, that kind of stuff. I really like the way the game is coming together graphically. And I think graphically, I think The Last of Us Part 2 is going to impress.
Yeah, my initial thought when I saw what they were showing in The Last of Us Part 2, some of the early stuff, was this is Red Dead 2 quality.
Good.
As far as like some of those scenes where they're on the horseback going through the mountainscapes or through the snowscapes.
Basically screams Red Dead.
That was the initial impression I got because I remember those scenes in Red Dead and how beautiful they were, how moving they were, and I really liked that.
Yeah.
So that's my thought there. If this game can match Red Dead graphically, Red Dead 2 graphically, I think it can. I think it possibly will. Coming from a AAA budget and a AAA studio, so I think you got a good chance there.
Good. Let's talk about controls, pacing, addition of the jump button, all that kind of stuff. I think we almost have a little bit more, obviously not identical, but we have a little bit more Tomb Raider-y vibe to some of the environments. And it gives you more options for verticality, better speed of movement. We've seen some scenes of Ellie running through those open areas by some enemies, diving into the grass. That's all stuff that, honestly, I always thought should be in the game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, whether you compare it to some of the Tomb Raider remakes or Uncharted Lost Legacy. That's a game I think that Naughty Dog is taking some legitimate inspiration from and what they did with that game and kind of the combat and some of the environmental things they did in that game and bringing it even in a bigger way to this game.
Okay.
I always said that I thought playing as Ellie would be a good thing because it's going to be a faster, nimbler character, God willing, and that's what I'm hoping for because I do not like to play as a character that moves like a sloth, right? Or that moves in a lumbering, slow way. It's not how I would be in real life, right? If I'm playing in a survivalist setting, right, and this is life or death, I'm moving. I'm humping it, right?
Yeah, we're not fucking around.
I'm moving. I'm gonna be in shape. I'm gonna be training. I'm gonna be that's what you'd expect from these characters. So when they move slow, when they shamble, it just doesn't feel right. It's hard for me to connect with that character. So I like a lot of the stuff you see in the new Tomb Raiders, the way Lara moves in those games, and if they kind of go in that route with Ellie, giving the jump, giving more of maybe some of the swimming, and some of the just more realistic traversal mechanics, I'd be very happy here.
Let's talk about the violence. Some of the stealth kills we've seen, some of the kills in general, some of just the gritty feel, all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on them kind of seeming like they've amped up the violence and amped up the rage a little bit in this game? Because that's how it feels to me.
And I think you're right, too, because it always felt like Joel would there was some violence in the PS3 version.
There was. This just feels
but I think Ellie gets him with the knives more.
Yeah, this feels like it's a little bit more murderous.
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit more rage.
Almost like a manhunt vibe going on.
Oh yeah.
In some ways.
Oh yeah, sometimes. Yeah. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, I always think to myself,
as long as it feels right, I guess I don't care.
My thoughts have always been, look, like
there is a line between gameplay and something that you would actually do, and then gratuity, right?
Yeah,
and gratuitous violence.
That's true.
So that is something to keep in mind, and we'll look for that when we play. But at the end of the day, put yourself in her shoes, right?
Yeah.
If this is life and death, this isn't going to be one of those things where you like stand there with your knife like this.
You're gonna fucking kill him.
You're going for it.
Well, it's like, remember the scene in the one trailer where the person's playing their PSP or PS Vita, whatever that crap handheld is. They're playing the little handheld, and she sneaks up on her and she's like, "Don't scream," and she goes to take her, and when she does, she tries to pull a knife on her, and Ellie kills her, and she's like, "Oh shit," almost like she was like surprised that she did it.
Yeah.
But I like that there's a little bit of humanity here still.
There is the humanity, but it also makes sense, right? Like you'd expect Ellie to do that in
like
that situation.
Kill her or be killed.
Kill or be
killed. Or be alerted.
And that is the type of world that you're in.
Yes.
So the character's motivations and actions have to represent that.
Yep.
And again, violence-wise, I mean, we played a lot of violent video games. Yeah. We've stomped a lot of heads. I like
violence in my games.
Yeah, that specifically doesn't necessarily bother me or worry me as long as it makes sense.
Yeah, like within the game. So in Manhunt, you made the comparison before. It always felt gratuitous.
It was gratuitous.
Manhunt never felt like you had to do all the stuff you did. So, like for me, that's what I'm looking for, right? Does she hit him with the bat in the head twice, or does she him 4, 5, 6 times every time? No, see, I'm making.
And then scrape up his brains and melt and eat them.
But seriously though, I'm making a point, right?
You are.
Like, does it feel super gratuitous?
Yeah.
And that is something interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that, because the violence that we've seen in the trailers, gameplay-wise, and the violence that we've seen kind of displayed, through some gameplay showcases, has been very guttural. It has been very intense with heavy bass tracks on the stabs and the slices. And remember that movie we went to go see? It was a foreign movie, and the guy was in the prison. Yeah. And every time he stabbed him, it was like a bass thud. What was it called?
Raid, I think.
Raid or Raid
2.
3 or Raid 2. So whatever. But it kind of gives me that vibe, right? Like some of these people, when you kill them, it's just like when she puts the knife into their neck, you're like, oh shit. Like I want it to feel realistic in that this is the setting we're in, but I don't want it to feel like Manhunt where you're like, like the shiv 8 times in the face. Like, that's fucking ridiculous. You don't need that.
It'll be interesting to see what our final thoughts are on that when we play it, and whether or not we actually think this would be something we could actually see.
Sure.
Versus kind of what you're saying. Do we get into the almost laughable sort of... Yeah. Like, is this necessary?
They're going, right? They're going for a serious tone. I don't think they're going to go for, like, the Marvel tone here where, like, half the game is jokes.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to go for that.
I don't see it.
But my point is, end of the world, gritty, dark setting, violence is a reality. And, I do have to give Neil Druckmann credit because he did make a really good point in one of the trailers. The factions that are surviving that are not violent are not going to survive very long.
Yeah.
And it is for everything you could say about Neil, that's a really good point to make, and it's a point I agree with.
Well, when you look at it too, like you talk about how the world could go back to a state of nature, right? If you actually had some sort of nuclear war or something that was seriously devastating to the population.
Look at what happened with some of the environmental effects during this whole past crisis that we just went through as a nation and as a world. Yeah. How many some of the damage that we'd been doing to the environment started to go the other way.
It did. But if society breaks down, right? Society's been built. The current society we're in has been built over iterations for many years, and when humans started out, it was a kill or be killed state of nature.
100%.
Warring tribes, warring this, warring that, and that's what happened. You either won or you lost. If you won,
lived or you died.
You took it over. The losers became, your subjects. I mean, that's the way it was.
Yeah.
So you go back to that state of nature where you have a couple warring factions. Well, what the hell do you think they're going to do?
Yeah. Kill each other.
It's a dog-eat-dog mentality.
100%.
And I think that is a realistic portrayal of what you would see if that happens.
Agreed.
Or, you know, if something like this would actually happen.
Agreed.
And obviously it's hitting home a little bit with everything the
Going
world's
on.
been through this year.
Yep.
It's kind of prescient timing, to be honest, to release the game like this. So we'll kind of be looking at all that stuff as we play. But at the end of the day, guys, at the very end of the day, you know, we game all the time. I mean, our free time, that's what it's spent doing pretty much. Is fishing, working, and gaming, you know?
Yep.
And when we're gaming, we're usually looking to play games that are fun. At the end of the day, the game has to be fun and engaging. Now, I don't really think this game is going to not be engaging. Obviously, when you look at what we should expect from a storyline and a voice acting perspective, the engagement's going to be there in that regard. But is that moment-to-moment gameplay compelling enough to get us to the end of it? That's what I want to see.
You know, now, Mr. Fucktube,
I want to be done with this game. Like, when this game ends and those credits roll, I just want to look at you. I want to be, like, emotionally exhausted.
Yeah.
And I say, dude, that was just a fucking harrowing experience.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to have had that experience. I'm proud to have had that experience. Like, that's what I want to say to you.
Sure.
You know, when you have a single-player game, when you have a contained experience, that's the best type of game. You've got to look at the people you're playing it with, whether it's, you know, you guys on stream or whoever's with us. You got to leave and say, you know, you just sit there and take it in at the end and be, wow.
Well,
you know,
when you have a $60 day one title,
especially a AAA price point,
AAA price point, you have to give that kind of experience, especially in a single player game with very little replayability.
That's right.
And that's the reality.
It is.
Now, Mr. Fucktube, there's a lot of stuff going on the internet. People talking about, you know, fake reviews, false reviews, whatever, shill reviews, however you want to talk about it. I don't want to get into that with you. But I want to ask you something. Would you ever come on here and tell our viewers anything other than how you really felt about your gameplay experience?
Nope.
Have you ever recorded a video when we sat down and talked about a game and looked at the camera and said, I liked this game, when in reality you didn't like it?
That's never happened, and I've taken a lot of shit for it. A lot of people tell us how wrong we are, and they call us names. But you know what, guys? At the end of the day, we're always going to tell you how we really feel.
So,
and you don't have to agree with us, but we will be giving you an honest, legitimate vibe about how we're feeling about this game.
Did you cash the check from Naughty Dog, though?
Oh, not yet. Fuck. Shit.
We don't say anything positive until we get that money.
Oh, that's right. Okay, shit.
Is this still on? Fuck. Anyway, you know, the motto here on the Balding Plebs has always been no BS.
That's right.
Right. And it's really important that we continue to maintain that. Whether we get a key for a game, whether we buy a game, whether we play a game once, twice, 100 times. It's really important that we maintain that no BS motto. So going into the no BS review for The Last of Us Part 2, I'm really going to be interested to see your reaction to not just the story, but the gameplay and everything else that goes into making The Last of Us Part 2 the full package of a AAA game.
You look at what you got here, guys. PS4, this is kind of the final 6 months, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay? You got 3 big-time players coming in. You've got The Last of Us Part 2, you have Ghost of Tsushima, and you have Cyberpunk 2077. Okay?
Yep.
These are the big 3 for the second half of the year here, pretty much. And then you're going to be into PS5. It's going to be interesting to see if we start this off on the right track with Last of Us Part 2. We've taken a few delays for this game. You know, all the stuff that's happened got pushed back to June. I think Naughty Dog's had a lot of time to work on it. I've got the full download on my PS4 right now, 78.5 gigabytes. Ready to go. Thursday night, 11 p.m. Central, we will be live, ready to play. And it's going to be a great experience. I'm looking forward to it. You know, after 8 years, you see I with what Rockstar did with Red Dead after 8 years and brought us a phenomenal game that came full circle up to the newest consoles, and I had a great time with that game. I really enjoyed it. graphically, emotionally, storytelling wise, everything. I really liked it. And if Naughty Dog does that with The Last of Us, I'll be happy to sit here and say, you know what, this was worth the $60. I mean, I'm happy to have bought this, right? I'm always happy to support a developer I think that delivers at the end of the day. I don't, all the nonsense aside, all the, politics and everything else aside, you deliver a great game, I'll be the first one to sit here and say that you guys should buy it. So that's where I'm at. We're counting down the minutes, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to see what they bring to the table.
Like the video if you enjoyed our discussion for The Last of Us Part 2 going into the game's launch, coming up very, very soon. And we will see each and every one of you right here next time for real, no BS content like this.
You're welcome.
GG, yo plebs.